Hello, everyone. This is Belinda Carr, and you're listening to my podcast on building science, products, and technology. As we know, the construction industry is ripe for automation and disruption. It has been reliant on manual labor and outdated tech for far too long, which has led to lagging productivity. Every week, I chat with a company that is exploring ways to tackle these issues. Today, I'm speaking with Robert Balderas, founder and CEO of Bob's Containers in Austin, Texas. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, your company converts new or used shipping containers into homes, offices, crypto mining pods, and more. That's probably a good general overview of Bob's Containers.
Yeah. We what do we say? We containerize solutions. So we build them into anything. What you see the majority of, which is our huge focus, is homes. Homes to be used for additional dwelling units, short-term rentals, backyard apartments, things like that. Trying to build up scale and then eventually approach an affordable housing line, which we feel like we're getting closer to.
Yeah. So anyone who has watched my video on shipping containers knows about my skepticism with converting them. But what you have built is so much bigger than just a shipping container conversion company. You have been diving into data scraping and e-commerce financing and outsourcing of the actual conversion of these containers. You are building a very, very different kind of construction company. And I really appreciate how innovative you are. And I'm looking forward into diving into the specifics of all of those. But before we do, let's start with your story, because you come from a software engineering background. You also worked at Coinbase at one point in your career.
Yes.
How did you take the jump from software engineering to building this container conversion company?
Yeah. A bit about me, I grew up pretty blue collar around manufacturing and service trades, things like that. Basically, I was working in a large company, building e-commerce systems. And yeah, you just sort of you get the itch, get to a certain age. And at the time, the film War Dogs came out, in which for those who have seen it, it's just based on a true story about two youngish guys who just start bidding on requests for proposals, RFPs, for the U.S. government. In this instance, it was for weapons, so we're not doing anything like that or nefarious, but it did put like an idea in my head that just really grew. And so spent time looking at different websites that posted RFPs. At the time, the city of Austin had posted one to convert 6 shipping containers into offices for a community first initiative they were doing called Austin First. And basically it was going to be a space for new businesses to open up a retail shop or some sort of business around it. It was office space for them. And they were going to put to work some idle dirt they had at the old airport. And anyway, so that being top of mind, having to drive, filled out the paperwork, submitted it, and then went through the process, sold ourselves and won the bid. Really pitching that, hey, if this is part of your mission, you're creating an office for new businesses, give it to a newer business. And so
because they approached you and said, we don't see your website, we don't see any history
exactly.
of sale or conversion, but you managed to convince them and said, I'm the right person for this job.
Yeah. The interview process was pretty thorough, but they literally said, hey, we don't see any evidence that you've ever done this. And I was like, hey, I have it, but I can't. Right. And so there's an interview process, answer the right questions, and just sold ourselves on the drive and the ability to do it.
And you're so resourceful because you figured out, you had never done something like this before, but you figured it out. You went on Facebook Marketplace, I believe, and found some shipping containers that people were selling.
Yeah. So at the time, the market was very, I guess you could still say it's pretty fragmented, but buying shipping containers, there's no Walmart for it, right? Yeah. And so you just kind of search Craigslist, Facebook, and all that. You find ads, and buying the container was a small piece of the puzzle to get the whole project done. But while doing that, we just met nefarious characters who weren't delivering. It felt very scammy. This didn't have a good feel for someone spending thousands of dollars. And so we actually bought from 2 vendors, and one never delivered and the other delivered subpar products. So, you have to deal with that, that hiccup when you just started to get started. But just got frustrated and started making calls and knocking on doors, went to the Port of Houston, figured things out, got in front of a ship line. It's like, okay, well, let me see your contract. Okay, this is legit. My minimum to sell you is 20. We didn't need 20, we only needed 6, but just took the surplus there, wrote the commitment, took the surplus there, put out ads with simple formula, here's the price delivered, here's the phone, you can call us, we pick up, we have a website, just giving someone a modern e-commerce feel, and it took off, right? And that was what we did our first year as we were building our first mods
So
and
you were
building the.
just selling, you were like a middleman between the main people selling containers at ports and all the other people requiring shipping containers around the states.
Yeah, it's called final mile in the industry. Is basically like consumer, smaller businesses. People want storage solutions.
Yeah.
Retired containers make sense. So we were a broker, and our approach was like, hey, we're very clear, transparent that we're a broker. We're not pretending to have thousands here. You buy from us. These are the guarantees. We'll let you pay on delivery to establish trust, right? Here's who we are. Here's what we look like. Like being putting a face on the business and just doing things the modern way went very far for this. And it seems like it's low hanging fruit, but at the time nobody was doing it.
Yeah. And then how did you transform it from just being a broker to saying, okay, I see more potential over here. I want to convert these containers. Did you see a trend rising in the building industry and on social media for container homes and ADUs?
Absolutely. So our first year, we just sold empty containers while we were doing our first project for the city of Austin. And we regularly got requests like, hey, can you paint these? Can you add a door? And we also took on the right mentors. We made enough sales to earn meetings. And they said, listen, like, I see what you're doing. You're doing the e-com thing. It's great. A version of you happened, 5 years ago. And then what happens is that margin becomes an issue, right? Everyone starts, you set the price, everyone starts undercutting you based on maybe they get a better price and relationship. So essentially they said, hey, you better figure something else out. You need to move up market. And what that meant is getting more into modifications, value added services.
Yeah.
So the first year was great. I mean, we built our website, we learned how to like pull data from different sources and like make automation out of it. And we just kept building on that in the back end. So when we went on market and started finally building homes, people were like, oh, like how do you guys move so quickly? Why are you pricing transparent when others aren't? Because it is less of a mystery for us, right? We know our cost of goods. We know the labor markets pretty well. We think it always changes, but we work really hard on it. And yeah, we focus on just really good customer experience.
And this is the robust technology that drives your company. That's where your software engineering background comes in with this construction background, it's fascinating to me. So you actually scrape data from websites like Home Depot and Lowe's and all these other websites, and you are constantly monitoring the price of lumber, the price of drywall, and you adjust your price accordingly. That's the automation, right?
Yes. So, we learned by taking on mentors in other industries where it's like, hey, if lumber triples overnight, that can really, really hurt you. And so we didn't want to get caught doing that. So when someone orders from us and they put their deposit, a lot of the procurement is automated. The parts get ordered, so we lock in. But also, to be proactive, we are scraping Home Depot and Lowe's and trying to figure out, okay, the price of lumber, we got an alert, it's doubling or doubled overnight. Do we need to make a pricing adjustment? Okay, we do from this date on, the orders previous to that, we're locked in, we're good, right? So less of a feel. So, we're in a tech incubator called Capital Factory, right? And so what that's helped us realize is that, we're not a technology company, right? But we're very tech enabled, right?
Yes.
And we operate like a technology company. So from my software background, it's like agile methodologies, like we call it agile construction here, where if it's a 25-step process, steps 4, 6, 10 all happen concurrently, not in a waterfall method, that helps us go faster and stay very lean. So there's a lot of aspects of that we bring over. Of course, everything that's e-com, we're always trying to stay bleeding edge to get people the best experience and to move quickly, right? So that's a huge examples of how previous lives in software we're applying in construction manufacturing. We could be labeled a lot of things.
So when you were building all this back end stuff that's going to drive your company, did you look at what the construction industry is currently doing and how they are failing or not succeeding at it? And you said, okay, you identified all the mistakes that they were making and said you wanted to do it differently?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a couple builders, and it seemed like there's a reason why they don't have velocity, because they don't have systems like this in check, right? And so wouldn't say they're failing, but it's just a whole different approach. And we knew that the market was huge. We want to get as much as we can. So we want to take a lot of orders in order to maintain a great reputation, stick to what we promised. We need to go faster. So the first thing identified is that, home builders aren't really first adopters in a lot of things, and they move much slower. How do we speed these up, right? And it really just came in like adding a dash of ecom and automation where you can, and it just helps really pick up speed. And like we feel like we move very quickly compared to traditional home builders.
And another difference with your company is that you don't actually convert these containers yourselves. You took a very interesting approach in hiring people or outsourcing the conversion of these containers to make sure that they were extremely efficient and they were going to complete these on time and on budget.
Yeah, yeah. So we tried early on. We had a lot of builders that were employees, and we still have a good amount. But we realized that there's already companies out there, home remodelers, different types of like construction groups that can do this work. It's actually very simple compared to building a home because the square footage is so small. Um, and so we just started bringing in subcontractors or like home remodelers, other types of teams that have a little bit of every trade in-house and certifications. And it works out pretty well because we say, hey, we're providing facility, here's the menu, we're going to pay you, and you
You
have consistent work.
provide them with materials too, right?
Yes, all the materials, the containers are there. We handle the welding and the structural stuff because that's, talent, some talent you have to bring in house. And so then my team just handles managing the projects, making sure that, crew A is starting on time, they're going to hit their deadline, a little incentive to be ahead of schedule. And we do all the quality control checks. We provide the materials to make sure that we're sourcing the most appropriate things for every build.
And you have a yard in Austin where all of these conversions are happening, right?
Yeah. So we got very fortunate. We leased basically a truck parking lot, big gravel yard, and we just slowly took it over where we have now over 100 containers under construction, right?
Oh my gosh.
And we have crews that go through sort of they're the assembly line and perform their trade, and it works out pretty well. Yeah. So we're a bootstrap company, so we have no investors yet, and we've took the approach that we could, right? Like keeping costs low where we can, making sure everyone's incentives and lines, and it's been working.
So where have you seen the greatest demand for these converted containers? Because I know there are a lot of crypto mining companies that have moved to Texas over the last year or so. So I'm sure that's a big part of your customer base. But then there are all the ADUs. Like you said, the homes are probably the home units, and the ADUs are also a big portion of your customers too.
Exactly. So there's a huge housing demand, and there's not enough homes for people to live in. I think when California passed the SB 9, allowing additional dwelling units, a clear pathway to that, they've sort of set precedents where every major city is allowing it. And so we get a lot of customers who come to us like, hey, I have some unused land, just outside the city. I want a quick structure. I can get a house built for 3 times as much, but 2 years, and just takes a long time. And we're a modular construction company technically, so we deliver the structure ready to plug and play. So we come into consumers who want to get something going very quickly, right? And also real estate investors who want to put them to rent. They see a demand for a city like Austin. People want to come in, visit on the weekends, or want to move here. They're looking for rental inventory. And this is like they could get into a long permitting process and traditional construction, or they can go to a company like mine. It's like, hey, we can deliver you 12 units within 6 months. Also, you're doing the site preparation while we're building, and that's like agile construction. You get to market much faster.
So what's the average turnaround time? You did say around 6 months.
Much less than that. I think we have about a 4 to 5 week queue time before we start a build, but we're done 4 to 6 weeks after. So like if you order today, you get it within 2 to 3 months.
Oh, wow. And how many units have you all sold so far?
I would say last year we did just under 200, and this year we're set to triple it, around 600.
Oh my
So
gosh, wow.
yeah, we've been growing consistently 3 to 4x year over year, and it's working really well. I mean, our process is now about scaling it up. So one thing we're doing now is like we want to build an indoor facility because Austin has 300 days of sunshine, but we could be building the other days. And also, as we've grown, we want to go get some credentials to ship into more states. We can get permitted in every state, but it could be faster. And so we want to build an indoor enclosed facility, bring in a little more automation and robotics, maybe around welding or painting, and move faster, and then ship easily into all 50 states.
And y'all have a We Funder going on right now in order to help build that indoor facility.
Yes, yes, it's our expansion. So we're raising up to 3 million, and it's all about our growth, right? Building the indoor facility, getting a fleet of show models in place. So a lot of people, they like the idea. They discover the container home. It's very appealing to them. It's hard to get a sense of the space, even with the best ecom, with the 3D tours and all that. There's nothing like stepping
Walking
into
through,
one.
yeah, nothing's the same
Yeah,
as actually experiencing it firsthand.
yeah. So we have people fly all over the nation into Austin just for a tour. We give tours of our factory every day, at least half a dozen, sometimes even more. And people, when they step into one, they're very likely to purchase, right? They need to get a sense of that space. Now, leaning into that, with all our e-com and web traffic, we know where they're finding us. And so part of the raise is we'll build the factory, we'll build a fleet of show models that we'll place in different markets so people can do a self tour. They can stay in one in a night as an Airbnb, get a good real sense of the space. And so they can make a purchase, right? They can feel more comfortable what they're getting into. So
Oh,
yeah, we're
that's
just
interesting.
facilitating where demand is. Yeah.
So can actually have some of these units livable, not in your factory, but around your factory so people can experience it overnight. That's a very, very interesting idea.
Yeah. A try before you buy situation.
Try before you buy.
Yeah.
So what sort of units do y'all offer? How large of a unit? How many can y'all connect together?
Yeah, so we do the nominal sizes 20-foot and 40-foot containers, which are 160 square foot, homes, casitas we call them, or 320 square feet larger. How we market is that this sleeps two, this can sleep four type deal, because we're targeting people who want to put them on a rent. And then the price range can vary. It can go as low as 35 and it can go all the way over 100K. Depends on how many bells and whistles you want to put on them. A lot of customers come in and do a very customized design, because we'll do that, and put glass, they'll put a deck on the rooftop with staircase, hot tub on the roof. There's a lot of things you can do with
Hot
it,
tub on
right?
the roof too.
Yeah, you want to maximize the space. But yeah, so that's our most common sizes. We are getting more into multi-unit. And so when we entered the market, we saw, okay, there's about 72 builders in the US that do this kind of work, something related. Most of them aren't online or do any e-com. The other half, they're so busy they're not picking up the phones. And we realized that, because they're custom home builders. When you see a photo of a 5,000 square foot home with a container, they're putting 10 containers together. That work
Yeah.
has to be done on site. So we're not set up for a lot of on-site work. We do it very selectively, but we do know people want more square footage, because the container is very strong, where it's strong, in durability and speed, but square footage can be an issue. And so now we have multi-unit menu where we'll do L shapes, E shapes, shapes where it requires a 36-inch connection. That's the doorway in between different units, or a maximum of 10-foot cutout if they're putting side by side. That
That's very
allows
smart
us,
because you
yeah,
identified very early on that just connecting over two containers, three or four more containers, isn't a smart decision financially and for other reasons too, like structurally too.
yeah. The container rim is the structural integrity. So
Yeah.
when people combine that and they start cutting into it, they have to go back with Renar and reinforce it. All that stuff has to be done on site. And it gets to the point where I think we figured out past 4 containers side by side, the price per square foot is not as competitive as a stick and frame. It's only competitive in, I'm trying to get a structure in a remote area where there's not labor and materials to begin with. Then it makes sense. But for a lot of what we're doing, we want to take a very pragmatic approach and give a very good product offering. So like, hey, this makes sense. It's at a great price point. It's cheaper than what you would do any other type of construction, and we're very fast.
So having L-shaped or E-shaped containers, like you said, that has minimal cutouts, and so your structural reinforcement and all that, you're saving a lot more money and time when it comes to all those kind of shapes rather than just side-by-side units.
Correct. So we get you that square footage without having to do a ton of on-site or just extra welding for reinforcement.
So once
It's
you're,
it's
sorry,
I would say
continue.
we're very big on making the containers, recognizing the container is very strong in a lot of situations, and then in certain situations it's just not the best product, right? So identifying that and then driving our menu about, here's the smart decisions, and we know this because we're in the industry and we build these.
So once you'll complete the conversion of the container, do y'all ship it to the customers or do y'all outsource that as well?
So we handle the shipping. There's a we, because of our first year of being in the industry, moving containers, throughout, this region, we know the trucking companies that are qualified. We know how to load them. They come on a flatbed trailer pulled by a pickup truck, right? So they're very nimble. They can get in and out of tight spaces. So yeah, we handle the logistics. We don't have the drivers in house. We contract it out, but we vet them. They have the right insurance, all that. So
Do y'all help homeowners when it comes to permitting as well?
yeah, we can do a sales consult. We start with the feasibility study, and depending on where they're at in the US, we advise, here's how you can get it permitted. Is permitting even required? So we just started doing that because the demand's growing and more people want permitting help. When we first started, it was, hey, we're treating this like a consumer packaged good. It's off the shelf. We could tell you right now from what we could see, permitting is not required based on square footage. Now, as we get into larger builds, we're definitely being involved in permitting. We have sales engineers now that walk them through it, and it can even handle it as a turnkey solution.
So, like you said, in the early stages, if you're just using a single container, it's under a certain footage. So they do not need it permitted. They can just put it in their backyards as an ADU.
But right. Under 200 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, under 200 square feet, it can be considered a shed. And if it's not plumbed, this is the backyard apartment, there's very little permitting, if any, required, right? You can get a shed permit. So we definitely lean into that. And then there's a huge amount of people who are, outside of the city limits that, it's close enough to build a community and, to get renters, that permitting is very minimal required. Yeah. So we definitely, when we started, with that startup mindset, it's like, well, we're giving you a consumer packaged good, we're not getting involved in the permitting, but as we've grown up, now we're being pulled into more, and it's, it's part of growing up.
So this is where I have a question for you. Like, you want to automate all these different parts in the buying, the manufacturing, and the selling. And that's like your software engineering background coming into this and trying to think of this whole process very differently. But then now you're experiencing all these interventions where people have demands for the size. They want to add a hot tub. They want to customize the unit. They don't want something straight from your website. It's not like Amazon where you just buy something and you get it as is. They want to have their thumbprint on the final unit. They want it a certain size. They want it a certain height. They want this opening cut out in the middle. So how do you balance that dilemma, I guess? Like, because you want a certain SKU of units on your website and you wish people just opted for that and made no modifications because it would be faster to produce these units. But people want customization at the same time.
Yeah, we approach it a few ways. Some customization, especially when someone's a tiny homer and it's their primary residence. We just suggest, hey, this is built like a home. If you want to put cabinets everywhere, clever storage solutions, you could do that on site. And it's your home, so you're going to get a lot of pride out of doing that. How we look into customizations, we keep it very split, right? 30% of what we build is a customized, the customer came with us our own design, and the other half is, this is a production Model A unit, maybe a couple mods here because we allow 3 or 4 variants, but we have a playbook for it. So we still move very quickly, type deal. And the reason why we take on custom units like that is because if you look at our menu, it's user driven, right? We're bootstrapped, so we didn't spend any time, or really we didn't have the funds to design what we think the market wants. People came to us, we built it for them, the first unit, and then we market it. We take photos, we do lifestyle shoots, we furnish it, put it on our website, and it's the e-com rule of it. If it gets clicks, it sticks. So our menu, if you look at it, it's that these were at one point a customer designed layout. We put it as a product on our menu, and it had enough demand, so it stays there. If it doesn't, we just do the e-com thing. We put it to the gallery as something we can do, type deal. So we'll always do customized units, right? Because frankly, there's only so many things you can do in the container, and we build playbooks based off of it. The first model goes a little bit slower, but we really study like, hey, now we know how to do glass garage doors here. Now we know how to do sunroofs, two-story decks, things like that. It's sort of, our R&D is funded by our users, and we just, we love them. Our clients rather, we love them. We just document the heck out of it, like you would do with any software process. And so now we have a playbook to go do it again, right? And so it's worked out pretty well.
That's fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about your e-commerce checkout that you have worked really hard on. Y'all a couple of months ago, you did mention that y'all were accepting crypto as payment. Do y'all still do that after the recent crash dip in crypto?
Yeah, we still do it. We'll always accept it. We use Coinbase as the partner, and they handle that. I mean, there's risk mitigation there. If you pay us in crypto, we convert it, right? We go use, that's what Home Depot accepts through every payment. So we'll convert it to fiat and US dollars and go buy our goods. We try to retain a little bit. That's amount of people paying what Bitcoin has certainly dropped in the past, 3 months, as the market's correcting or whatever's happening. But it's sort of like we don't make it hard for you to pay us. If you want to pay us in crypto, we'll take it type deal, right? And on the other end of the coin, which you mentioned earlier, there has been a huge demand for Bitcoin miners who have left, Asia and Russia to come here because we have, Texas has a huge grid that's very, parts of it are isolated and there's a surplus of energy. So we have participated and built about 90 different units in that space. That we come in strong there because where their energy is, there's not buildings. So this is a pre-made building ready to drop and connect. It's a
And
very good
minimal,
solution for them.
yeah, and it's
Minimal
minimal,
on-site.
yeah, and
Yeah.
minimal renovations on your part too.
Yeah. For us, we're just looking at it's a lot of cutting and welding and just painting with the special materials, but it works out pretty well.
Yeah.
So there's definitely been a slowdown of that. We think it'll be returning, within a year. But those are just sort of new, like I guess you could call like segments of business that we get into that has like immense amount of lessons that helps us build homes at better quality. We're constantly iterating, like, oh, hey, we learned how to apply a very specific epoxy for Bitcoin mining containers. That'd be great for the home buyer, for the solution, right? To make it more waterproof. So we sort of pull these things over and we just add it to our knowledge base and just help us become like a better builder, move faster, things like that.
Oh, that's fascinating because I mean, the heat generated in these crypto mining pods is far greater than heat generated in a traditional home or a little ADU that you all build. So those materials might have to be a little more resilient. So
Correct.
that's what you're talking about, the epoxy and all the materials that you use, those can be adapted for home use.
Yes. So it's this industry is amazing because there's so many things you can do with a container. We have customers come to us who want laboratories or different sorts of, industrial applications. We get exposed to so many different businesses and how they do and what their use case are. That there's a lot of lessons there that we could pull back into the home building portion of the business and just keep growing and make them better and faster. So we feel very, I guess, compared to any other kind of home builder there, we feel very like just fortunate that we get all these lessons that come to us that we can apply and continue to improve quality, speed, efficiencies, and grow.
Like you said, the R&D portion is from your customers, is from building. Like it's almost part of the process. You all don't have a separate budget for R&D because what you're doing every day is your R&D. That's
correct.
Very interesting. So I have
a lot of learn by doing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I have to ask you about the containers themselves. Do you all use new containers, reused containers, one-time use containers?
We use
where
new
do you source it
containers.
from?
Yeah, new containers, one-use containers. We don't use very frequently at all. I think we've only done one in the past like quarter, and that's frankly because during COVID, the supply chain got so out of whack. For lack of a better phrase, used containers cost more than new at one point, and that's sort of adjusted it, but it's still not. They're still very similar in price, and so with the used container, sure, we've built with them before safely. We have to remove all the oxidation, the rust, strip it down, repaint it. Like we only get them that come out of like US ports because US Customs doesn't release any container that has hazardous materials. We won't go buy them through a third party who is a trucking company because there's no Carfax for a container. So we have to get them from the sources we trust, right? And there are dozens of different suppliers, different price points in the market. The shipping container industry, I say, is like an onion. Every Larry peel back is like another billionaire who's got a supply and makes all their money on like one or two relationships or this little different approach. But we just buy from, the suppliers we trust. They get them from the ports, and they're always newer one-trip containers.
How has that been? Because your business is so reliant on the supply of containers. How have you managed to weather the storm over the last 2 years with all these crazy like you said, the price points of used containers are higher than new containers, and then the supply of containers. And how have you managed to push through all that?
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate. We haven't had any problem getting containers, right? So the shortage was, I would say, almost semi-artificial, right? It was a shortage because the containers make a lot of one-way trips to the US and they need to get back to places to be loaded for cargo. So during all this, tons of containers are coming in, but they get used once and they get stored. And maybe they're going to make their trip back somewhere, usually to Asia to reload, or they go for sale. And so what happened is the ship lines are like, okay, well, our used containers, we're pulling back that supply because they're booked, right? The cargo needs to come. Meanwhile, the factors in Asia were cranking out new ones consistently. They started landing. And so what we found is that like there was a lot of inventory of unused containers, and maybe the price did go up, but we're not in year one where we're buying it and reselling it. We're doing a huge value add. So we just absorbed the cost a bit, or we pass it on to the consumer, and it was very insignificant in what we're trying to do here. If a container went up $500, that really hurt a lot of the people in the industry. We think about 70% of the buy and sell container operators went out of business, or they pivoted to doing a value add service like us, making them into a 60,000 plus home, right? That
But
extra
you
five
all
hundred
got
dollars is
started earlier, so you had a little bit of, I don't know, advantage over them.
yeah, it's really that we're making it into something way more valuable.
Yeah.
So if let's hope it doesn't, if price doubles again, our market who we sell to, they're not as affected to it type
Yeah.
deal. So
So how do
yeah,
you see
so
Bob's Containers growing over the next 5 years or so? What's the big vision for Bob's Containers?
yeah, so we're just going to keep leading into demand, keep standardizing different models, and then I know we've shipped to 35 states already. Continue our presence, and what I mentioned before, we're doing this crowdfund campaign. We're raising 3 million for the factory, so we can enter more states, put show models throughout the U.S. Augment that sales e-com process, and then we're going to tackle an affordable housing line. Like we learned early on, from studying other companies that that's something that takes a lot of capital, and you got to have like scale to make a house that's really affordable, which we think price point is 60K or under. And so that's not something a startup can do without a bunch of investors. But part of the raise is that, hey, we have the traction, we know what we're doing, we have the knowledge base, we have a clear path to how we can make affordable housing units, that'll be stamped and can be placed in any state. So that's sort of how we're growing. Our big vision is, work with home builders, people who have years and years of experience, become a very good product offering for them. Like, hey, I'm building a subdivision of 100 homes. People really want a backyard apartment. A container by Bob's Containers is like the best solution for speed, and like they're well built, they're established. And so work with home builders, and there's a possibility there that we're very open to, is that we could become a part of another home building company, right? I think home builders are going to finally start realizing, hey, we don't innovate fast enough, but there are all these younger home building, usually modular construction companies that are building homes. We need to work with them and bring some in-house. We've seen Lennar's invested in some companies in LA. DR Horton just announced a huge investment in the company in Vegas, I forget the name, but Boxable. So
Yeah.
we just know that, like many other industries I've seen before, these startups like ours are innovating, and I'm not trying to work against a big home builder. I'm trying to work with them, and so that's a possibility we get acquired by one. That's something we would love.
Are you concerned about how drastically different the aesthetics are of a container home compared to traditional homes? For me, my concern is that all these brick homes in the States, like wrapped with hardy siding or vinyl siding, whatever, many of these people right now are putting these metal containers in their backyards because there's a demand for it as an Airbnb, or it's the fad right now. But the aesthetics of that home are so drastically different. I feel like 10 to 20 years down the line, when they start aging, they could be, it's such a big mismatch in the aesthetics. Could it ever be a detriment to the value of the property?
We haven't seen that. I could say this, that a lot of what we ship out, sometimes we'll clad the outside and it'll look like a cabin. So it's like, this is a structure. You could put a facade to match your house, right? You could change the exterior of it pretty easily, right? It's be like putting a new facade on the shed. type deal, or a small structure. So I think if tastes change, this still will have a strong demand because, it has the strengths of speed, price, durability, and the aesthetics can change, you know. So we haven't really encountered anyone who's like, hey, this is not matching my house, or I don't like the way it looks now. What can I do? We haven't seen that yet. And even if there are, it's like we believe there's a solution, just change the facade on it.
And another concern from like a building science perspective is that these are metal boxes, highly conductive metal boxes. Like, wouldn't it be smarter to use an insulating panel around the structural frame rather than corrugated metal? Is that something you would consider in the future when you start expanding Bob's Containers, using like a metal structural frame and different kind of infill in between the structural units?
Yeah, so we'd love to get more into using like, sit panels that have a high
Yeah.
insulation value. There's already some products out there that are getting proven. Right now we do closed cell spray foam, which does a great job, and it's moisture barrier. There's no issue with moisture. But yeah, we would definitely get into using different types of insulation on the exterior. So right now, when we do clad in an exterior container to give it a different aesthetic, it has the option to move the insulation to the outside. We call it outsolation. And so you get a higher R value, things like that.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so great about your business. It's not about the container itself. It's about the technology, the how the business runs, because you could switch that out to something more efficient or more, I don't know, more cost effective down the line, and your business would still continue to run. It's not just about the metal box. And I think
Right.
that's the value in your company. You have built it so that it's larger than just a container home. And that's
Yeah.
very impressive to me.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think I mentioned this once before. It's like we're using containers for very specific reasons. So whether we use them or not, they exist. And so that supply helps us go faster. We have 6 weeks at least, lead on anyone else who's like in a volumetric modular build, like a steel frame. So, but the processes and our mindset and our ecom, that's what's really scaling.
Yeah.
And so there is a reality one day where we're like, hey, we're not even doing mini containers. We're doing this other form factor. But the processes, they were kind of agnostic, and we can just lift and shift them. And
Exactly.
now we're building different things. I've had friends and family ask, like, why containers? Why aren't you doing tiny homes or van conversions? It was all about scalability, right? One less thing to really worry about is that, because by international standard, the shipping container dimensions are not going to change. That allows us to make processes and procedures and bring in automation where it's like we can prefab parts and move faster. So one day we may be doing another type of form factor. We're not sure yet, where the demand is, but we're confident that, we have the knowledge, the technology behind us to really scale.
And
And
flexibility too, because y'all are
yes.
so robust. And it's amazing, like you said, y'all are bootstrapped. Y'all have grown so big in the last 2-3 years or so without any external investment. That's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we believe strongly in creating value, right? And we figure it out, So now we're at the point where we're going to open that up so we can scale this up. But it wasn't a line for us to take on investors early, because we feel like we wanted to figure this out, prove the demand's there, be someone of like, this is true value, and now have those conversations of like raising and bringing on the right partners, that'll help us grow and work with the right other home builders, build partnerships. So yes.
That's amazing, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing the story behind Bob's Containers and how y'all are growing. I think there are a lot of lessons that the construction industry can learn from you and from the way you're building and running your company. It was, again, very nice speaking to you. I hope we catch up soon. If people want to contact you and learn more about Bob's Containers, what's the best way to reach out to y'all?
Yeah, I mean, our website is bobscontainers.com. You can find us on any social media. It's usually Bob's_containers. We're very discoverable. Our campaign is going live on WeFunder in August 15th, maybe sooner. So there's tons of information there. And then through YouTube, we're on every social media channel, very discoverable. And then, or you can just reach out to me direct. My email is simple. It's robert@bobscontainers.com.
That's wonderful. Thanks a lot, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.